Hey, it's Rod Yates. Welcome to another episode of Humans of Music, a Jaxsta podcast. Each episode, I talk to a music creator or industry professional about their life and career, the ups and downs of their journey, and the lessons they've learned. And my special guest today is artist, songwriter, and producer Skylar Grey. The name Skylar Grey might not be instantly recognisable, but you'll definitely know the songs she's co-written. Love the Way You Lie by Eminem, Clarity by Zedd, I Need a Doctor by Dr. Dre, Last One Standing from the Venom Let There Be Carnage soundtrack are just some of the mega hits she's had. She sung the chorus hook on Glorious by Macklemore and Coming Home by Diddy. She's a longtime collaborator with Eminem as a performer, songwriter and producer, and she's also a solo artist in her own right. In fact, from the moment she started performing as a kid, being the main artist was Skylar's goal. But as you're about to find out, there have been many detours along the way with both incredible highs and soul-crushing lows. It was during one of those low periods that Skylar wrote, performed and produced her new self-titled solo album, which is where we started our conversation. It's such a beautiful record. It feels like an album that you can just sink yourself into, but
thank you.
It's clearly written from a place of significant pain. What was the process of writing the record like for you?
Well, the past 5 years have been really hard for me, and I haven't really been able to talk about it because I was in a legal situation, and I probably shouldn't talk too much about the details, but pretty much it was like my divorce on top of a lawsuit that got brought into the mix, and I got really depressed. It was really hard on me for 5 years to be in this legal situation, on the phone with lawyers every day, spending all my money on legal fees, and my ex was like, it's divorce. So
Sure.
I don't want to talk too much about it, but anyway, it was really hard on me, and I wasn't able to talk about it publicly because it was a legal situation, and I didn't want anything I said to get brought into the case, and so I wrote all these songs basically about, not about that, but coming from that struggle, And so you can probably hear that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you hear it even in the opening song on the record, Runaway. I can't face this mess I've made. And later in the song you sing, I just want to run away, go to where nobody knows my name. Is that how you felt during that period?
Yeah, there's actually been a couple times in my life when I've felt like I just wanted to run away. And one of the times was 2008-ish, when I finally left LA because I had lost my record deal, lost my manager, my lawyer, everybody dropped me. I felt like a total failure. And then icing on the cake was my boyfriend at the time broke up with me. So I was like, what am I doing in LA? It's so expensive and I'm not succeeding here. And, people were like, you're crazy to leave LA. This is where the music industry is. If you want to succeed, you got to stay here and tough it out, And I was like, fuck that. No, I'm leaving. I'm done. I give up, And so I moved to a cabin in the woods in Oregon, and I literally ran away from my life.
Yeah.
But it was out in the woods in Oregon was where I fell back in love with music. I found myself again. And it came out of that experience writing Love the Way You Lie, the biggest song in the world. So going from a complete failure to, going on this soul-searching journey and coming out the other side on top of the world.
Yeah.
So it's weird because 10 years later now, obviously the circumstances are quite different, but it was like history repeating itself a little bit. So I have no manager, got dropped by Interscope, finding myself back in that position. At least I'm super in love with my fiance, and so that's good. And if I didn't have him, I don't know what I would have done. And then, having this crazy lawsuit happening. And one of the things I didn't know about marriage, well, I didn't really know anything about it when I did it, but I had no idea that every song that I wrote during marriage, he would be able to claim half of, because it's intellectual property. It's basically treated like a house in a marriage or a divorce. And so all this stuff that it came out of my brain, half of it was going away. And it was super discouraging and depressing for me. I just felt like, what's the point of working if half of what I'm making is going to somebody who's not doing anything at this point? So I kind of hit rock bottom again.
Yeah.
similarly to 10 years ago or whenever it was when I ran away. And there was a period of time, this like in the last year or so, when I was worried that he was going to be able to like claim a piece of my entire future as Skylar Grey.
Right.
And the only solution for me to be able to continue making music and being able to support myself was to start over again, create a new identity, and run away from being Skylar Grey, basically. And so I had this plan. I was going to go by Ghost Girl.
Okay.
And I was going to wear a ghost costume and cover my face and totally start over on my career.
Wow.
Yeah. Luckily, didn't have to do that. The case settled last year. Sadly, I had to sell my catalog to pay the settlement fee, but at least I got it behind me. And I came out of that experience feeling on top of the world, like, and strong, just because it was such a heavy weight that had been on me for so long. And it finally lifted. And I had gotten so used to it that I didn't even realize how relieved I'd be until I like experienced it. And then I was like, wow, that's behind me. That's gone. That's done. And I felt so liberated and free that I could be Skylar Grey still. I didn't have to change my name to Ghost Girl. And then the first song that I wrote after the settlement, or the first like big cut that I got, was the end title to the Venom 2 movie.
Right.
And I was like, this is like Love the Way You Lie, coming out of this shit and then going into this amazing moment in my career. It's just crazy. History really like felt like it was repeating itself. But anyway, so the Ghost Girl thing is what inspired the music video for Runaway. I don't know if you've watched that.
Okay.
Yeah. But I filmed that up in Oregon, where I first ran away in the first, story.
Yeah.
And then I'm wearing the ghost costume because it represents, how I felt this past year, wanting to just start over and be Ghost Girl.
And that's where you thought of the name Ghost Girl? That's just what that represented to you, what your mindset was that you wanted to be?
Well, yeah, I was like, what could be a way to create a new identity where nobody would ever have to see my face? It would be an easy thing to throw on.
Yeah.
I was thinking about it. I was like, it'd be pretty easy. I don't have to do makeup. Like,
right.
Just throw a sheet on.
And you're good to go. That having to sell your catalog, though, so does that mean that you no longer own the songs that not only your songs, but the huge co-writes that you did with people like Eminem and Dr. Dre and Celine Dion, you no longer have them? No. Is that right?
Yeah.
How do you make sense of that? How do you even deal with that?
I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you.
Sorry, this is the first interview I've done about this.
Okay. Take all the time that you need. There's no...
Yeah, my heart's broken about that, but, it is what it is, and I just got to, build a new catalog, write a new one,
Absolutely. Which you've started to do with this fantastic album. At what point are you okay to continue? Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
At what point, because you speak to artists who are going through traumatic times, and quite often they can't write during that period. They need to get some distance from it, and then they get some perspective, and then they can write. Was that the case for you, or were you able to actually write while this was all going on around you?
I think it was a little bit of both. Sometimes when I look back at the past, I have a clearer vision, hindsight's 20/20, and I'm able to like really decipher what happened and where I went wrong and write about it. Whereas like right in the middle of going through something, it's hard to fully understand what's going on in your situation. So, but I think with this album, because there were so many parallels to 10 years ago, I was able to kind of do it at the same time. Like it was like an album that I wrote about what I just went through and what I went through 10 years ago.
Right.
Like similar emotions, it was like a lot of parallels.
Sure. And I do want to talk to you about that time in Oregon, but just a few other things I'd like to talk to you about this record. First, there's a line in the song Cheers where you sing, "I'm tired of the same 12 notes." And that feels like such a relatable concept, particularly for a songwriter such as yourself, where at some point you must just go, there's only 12 notes. What do I do with them?
Isn't that crazy?
Where did that come from? Were you just at a point where you just couldn't write something at the moment and you were for searching for something?
No, it was just that it's not that I couldn't write. It's just that I was bored with everything.
Right.
I was like, I've heard this chord progression before. I've heard this melody before. Like, why can't we add more notes to the keyboard and go on crazy adventures, you know? And it's like we're so trapped in these 12 notes and like 4-bar phrases. And especially in, you know, popular music, it doesn't get that adventurous very often. And so, you know, with that song, Cheers, I had fun with the little half-step melodies that I did just because they just felt so unpredictable.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And I like to try to push myself to do things with chord progressions and melodies and harmonies that are unpredictable and or something that you think might clash usually, but for some reason it doesn't. So like there's another song, Show Me Where It Hurts, on the album. And there's two competing melodic like instrumental things going on. They're fighting each other, and there's actually a minor second happening at like one point every like few bars. And it makes me so happy because it like should clash and it should sound horrible, but it doesn't.
Right.
You know? I nerd out about that stuff.
That's like a little kind of eureka moment, is it? You're writing that and you go, yes, I've done that.
Yeah. Because I just love the tension in music. When it's just like so straightforward to me, I don't really feel anything. But when I can capture tension in an emotional way, like that's when I've nailed, you know, hit the spot.
Yeah. And so you produced the record yourself, is that correctly? Mm-hmm. Right. And obviously wrote everything as well. So was it just you, when you say you produced it, you were just basically your own sounding board? You would put the song, like do the vocal performance, etc., and it was all on your shoulders.
Yeah, I mean, I literally did the whole album right here in this room in the studio that you're talking to me on.
Wow. Was that because these songs are so personal that you just didn't trust them to someone else?
It's not even that. It's just, I mean, I think it's a lot of things. One is I know my way around Pro Tools, and I don't necessarily consider myself the best producer ever, but I do know how to follow my emotions and to turn them into sonics that bring those emotions across. And I don't necessarily know any producers right now that I feel can be inside of my head and my emotional state like that, you know? Like that would be a very intimate producer relationship where they would just have to like fully get where I'm going. And so sometimes it's just easier rather than like trying to like conduct or to direct another producer on what I'm wanting to do. It's sometimes just easier for me to dive in and do it myself, you know?
Yeah.
And then at the end of the day, I'm also an indie artist, and like producers cost money.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, and I learned how to produce kind of out of necessity, not wanting to live in LA. There's not like producers up in Napa that I know. And just because, you know, being indie, I can't really afford to pay people producer fees.
Sure.
So it's just, you know, working with what I got and making the most of it. And I also got a lot of confidence the first time I produced a song for Eminem.
Right.
Because I sent him a song called Leaving Heaven.
Yeah.
And I was expecting him to like put another producer on it, like tear my track up and redo it. And he didn't. He kept it and he loved it and he put it out. And I was like, wow, maybe I'm not so bad at this.
So that meant a lot to you, that confidence that he showed in you.
It really did. It gave me confidence for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
How do you mentioned if you had another producer, you know, they would have to try and get into your headspace or emotionally. And one of the things that struck me about your vocals on the record is how fragile they sound, particularly in a song like Fallen Apart. Did you have to get yourself into a headspace to perform in that manner on a song such as that? Or is it just a matter of turning the mic on and letting it flow?
Honestly, I've been singing so long, since I was 6. I don't really think about it.
Right.
It just, when I hear music, I immediately, it's like I switch gears into like a whole different person, and I just feel what I'm saying.
Right.
So it doesn't really take that much thought,
Okay.
you know, to sing. I'm not trying to sing a certain way. It just kind of comes out a certain way.
Yeah. So it's been that way since, because you mentioned, as you said, you started singing at 6, and I read you were even harmonizing at the age of 2. So there was clearly a musical DNA in you.
Or for sure, yeah. Both my parents were singers, so.
You formed a folk band with your mum called
Generations.
Generations,
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah, pretty awesome name.
Great name.
Yeah, makes sense. Very, very on brand. Yeah, so it was kind of a folk band. It was more like kid songs because I was a kid.
Yeah.
I was 6 to, I think I quit. I went solo when I was 14, so.
Right. Do you have special memories of that? That strikes me as a really special thing to do with a parent at the age of 6, to be performing with them. And
yeah, it was. When I was younger, I really enjoyed it. And then as I started growing up and getting judged by my peers, it became a lot harder for me.
Right.
I started being like, it's stupid to sing with my mom. Like, that whole thing, wanting to detach.
What age was that, do you think?
I think that was in middle school. So I started feeling that way when I was like in 6th grade.
Okay.
And then by the time I got to high school, I was like, I'm done, Mom.
Right. How did she take it?
I don't know. I think she probably wasn't too happy about it, but then at the same time knew that like I had to spread my wings.
Yeah.
You know, at some point.
Sure.
It was just, probably she didn't want it to happen that soon. I don't know.
Yeah.
Have to ask her, but.
Right. Prior to that, though, you released albums together and you toured around the Midwest as well.
We did, but I mean, touring is a strong term. We went and toured elementary schools, libraries, and like health conventions and birthday parties.
Right.
You know, it wasn't like arenas.
But did you learn anything about performing, do you think, from those days?
Oh, absolutely. I learned so many things. One of the things I really remember learning was just how to be professional, like in a professional environment.
Right.
As a kid, it's like you're 6 years old. Like it had to have been so hard for my mom to deal with me off stage. On stage, I always did my thing, but as soon as I got off stage, if I thought that I hit a bad note, I would cry and I wouldn't want to talk to anybody and I couldn't hold it together.
Right.
And so she had to teach me, like, we could talk about the mistakes and work on that later when we're at home, but when you're in public, nobody here heard that bad note, you know? So let's just go out there and shake some hands and take some pictures with people, sign some autographs, and keep it professional, and then, you know, in our next rehearsal, we can deal with the changes you want to make or whatever. So that was something I learned at a very young age. And then also, I was a moody kid. You know, sometimes I was excited to perform, and then sometimes I was like, I don't want to do this. You know? And she taught me, she like said something about a Christmas tree, and you got to turn on the Christmas lights. When you go on stage, you got to turn on the lights. And it's like a switch that you just flip and you turn it on for the audience. And that's something she taught me when I was really young that I still use to this day. If I'm not in the mood to go on stage, I still just think about, like, okay, as soon as I walk out on that stage, turn on the Christmas lights.
Wow.
You know?
That's a couple of big lessons there.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I learned a lot. I mean, there's so many things I learned. My mom and I made 3 albums together.
Yeah.
So being in the studio, recording on a microphone.
Right.
That's a whole different ballgame than, you know, singing live.
Yeah.
And like learning how to punch in and do harmonies and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Learned that at a very young age. Learning how to play instruments to a click track, you know.
Right.
And then also down to like making CDs, pressing CD. We ordered our own CDs. We didn't have like a label or something.
Yeah.
And, you know, we covered a lot of songs. So dealing with the publishing and how we're going to pay the songwriters. So all that stuff. and learned as a young kid. Yeah.
They're huge lessons. That's a real kind of schooling in DIY.
Totally. Yeah. And then when I got signed and I didn't have to think about most of that stuff anymore, I kind of forgot a lot of it. And I'm right now doing this album completely independently without a manager or anything. I'm like digging up some of that old knowledge and figuring out how to press CDs up again. Like, I'm gonna make CDs.
Will you make vinyl as well?
I want to, but because of the pandemic, I guess it's like a year wait on vinyl. There's some supply issue, so I don't know. Okay. We'll see. I would love to do vinyl, though. I've never done vinyl in any of my albums.
Okay.
And I've always wanted to. Yeah. And I feel like this would be a good one for it.
Absolutely. So your mum was clearly very musical, and I believe that your stepdad, he owned an art gallery. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And your biological father was in a barbershop quartet. Is that?
Yeah.
So you had art was just around you. It just seemed
everywhere.
Yeah. So it seemed like a very noble pursuit, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it just felt very natural. But, even my dad being in a barbershop quartet, he loves music. He's very passionate about it, but he never saw it like as a good job choice.
Okay.
So when I dropped out of high school, moved to LA to chase my dreams, he wasn't super stoked about that.
Okay.
My mom was very supportive of it, but my dad was like, he questioned it. Now he gets it totally. But.
Yeah, right. After you decided to go solo from your mum, how did you then progress? Did you start going into Madison to play jazz shows? Was that sort of your next step?
Yeah. So I started a band, and I had been sneaking into jazz clubs in Madison just to hear people play and make connections.
Yeah.
That was my first, bout of like, I'm going to go network. So I put a band together using some musicians that were like jazz musicians in Madison. And we played a few shows. But it became clear pretty quickly, like within a matter of 2 or 3 years of doing that and like playing some solo gigs at the piano and stuff, that I needed to get out of Wisconsin.
Right. Okay.
It just became very clear. Like there wasn't the demand in Madison for the type of music I wanted to make. And also I just felt like I kind of had hit a ceiling,
Sure.
And so I moved to LA. I think I was 17 when I made the move. Dropped out of high school when I was 16. Yeah.
What was school like for you? Because I believe that you were raised in Mazomanie. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, Mazomanie.
Mazomanie in Wisconsin, which is a very small town. For a kid with artistic ambitions, you mentioned earlier that the older you got, I guess the kids perhaps weren't as accepting of you performing with your mum. But even prior to that, being an artistic kid, was there space for you in a small community like that?
I think to a degree. Like I said, I just think I kind of hit the ceiling there with that kind of stuff. But, I had some really good art teachers. Actually, the last year of school that I did, I only went to physics and art.
Physics?
I didn't go to any other classes. I loved physics and I loved art.
That's such an interesting combination.
I know, weird.
What was it about physics you think that you loved?
I don't know. It just made sense to me.
Right.
And I had a really good teacher. So that always makes it better.
Yeah. Good teachers are so important, I think, for...
So important.
Engaging
I had some
people.
really horrible teachers, too.
Yeah.
And he was a really good teacher, though.
Right.
It was like an interactive class, whereas some classes, it was like the teacher just tells you what to read and then sits at his desk and waits for the class to be done.
Right.
And you're like, you're not really teaching me anything. You're telling me to memorize dates. That was horrible at history.
Okay.
Because of that. It was like, I don't know why we're talking about that.
No, it's just interesting to find out.
Yeah, but I think more so, though, I just felt like quite disconnected from my classmates.
Okay.
Like I didn't have a big social circle. Mm-hmm. I had a couple friends. One was in my grade and one was younger than me that I was really close with, but that was pretty much it. Like at lunch, I went to the band room and they had a little room within the band room that had a upright piano in it.
Right.
And so I would just like sit there, eat my sandwich, and play piano by myself.
Okay.
Because like at the like lunch tables, there was all these cliques, all these groups of people that, they all sat in the same place every day. And I never felt like I wanted to go to any of those tables.
Okay. Right.
I was like, this isn't my crowd. This isn't my crowd. This isn't my crowd.
I'll take the piano.
So I'm going to go to the piano.
So when did you start writing songs? Was it during this period or prior, even with you when you were performing with your mum?
I mean, I definitely started writing songs when I was really little, but they were like about popsicle. I think Green Popsicles was the first song I wrote.
Okay.
Don't remember it.
It's okay.
I was 3 or something. And then when I was 8, I think I wrote a song called The Same Sky, which made it onto our first album.
Right.
And it was about, I was in a swimming pool in Hawaii on vacation with my family, and I was looking up at the moon, and I was wondering if my dad, who was still back in Wisconsin, if he could see the same moon that I was looking at.
Right.
And so I wrote a song about it. Is this the same sky?
Yeah. That's a beautiful concept.
Yeah. And so I wrote a song about it when I was 8. So that's when it all started.
That was the start.
Yeah. I mean, that was the true songwriting start. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So you mentioned, you've been talking about the self-titled album. I've seen you talk about artists like the Cranberries and the Imogen Heap and Fiona Apple, and that you wanted to try and summon something with this album that those artists gave you when you were growing up. When did you start to discover, I guess, pursue your own music tastes in that matter? And what did those artists give to you?
It's interesting because, like, as a kid, you don't really know what you're listening to necessarily. It's just you're listening to whatever your mom's playing, or you're listening to whatever's on the radio. Or for me, also what my sister was playing, my older sister. She was like, into CDs, and I didn't know what a CD was, but I would come in her room and she'd be playing CDs. Yeah. And I would just like absorb stuff around me. And then at a certain point, I just felt myself being really drawn to the more emotional, the things that made me feel the most, I've always been into music that made me cry or like made me think about my life, clever lyrics.
Yeah.
And, melodies that take me into different realms.
Sure.
Like Imogen Heap, for example, her melodies are just so amazing.
Yeah.
Probably out of that group that you listed, the Cranberries and Fiona Apple were probably the first people that I kind of discovered. And then it was a little bit later when I discovered Imogen Heap. I think I was actually in LA already at the time.
Okay.
I think it was like 17 or 18.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that with Fiona Apple? Was that the Title album?
Title, yeah.
Yeah, such a great record.
It's a masterpiece.
We have to take a quick break, but don't go anywhere because we'll be back shortly with more from Skylar Grey. Welcome back to Humans of Music and my interview with Skylar Grey. So you drop out of school at 16 and you move to LA at 17. What is the ambition? To make it?
Yeah, of course. I didn't really have any contacts there. I didn't know anyone. I didn't have any plans other than I need to get out of Wisconsin. I need to chase my dreams. So I started meeting some people. I slept on couches. The first place I lived was the guitar player of Culture Club.
Really?
I slept on like his couch.
How did that come about?
Met through a songwriter. It's just so random. Yeah. And then I met my lawyer through like some guy in a hallway at a studio.
Okay.
It's just LA. That's the entertainment industry. It's all there. You walking down the street could meet somebody in music,
Sure.
And I was just so bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. I just wanted to meet people and network and make music. So I met some producers and ended up living with them for a while we recorded a bunch of music, and then that's what I ended up getting signed with a year and a half later.
Oh, okay.
To Warner Brothers.
Yep.
Yeah.
So was that, when you say you just met a couple of producers, so where do you even go to do that? You had to hustle, you had to knock on doors, you had to cold call. Is that how that happens?
No, it's just through people that, it started with one guy that I met at like this kind of music convention type thing.
Okay.
And then he was the one who first invited me out to LA. And the first time I came to like visit, basically, I had decided that I needed to be there. Okay. And so just like through him, and then he would introduce me to somebody who would introduce me to somebody. You know how it goes. Networking. It's 101.
Was it intimidating though, rolling into town on that first day, going, this could be the first day of the rest of my life?
It was, and it was hard. And I dealt with a lot of bullshit back then. I was young, naive, and a female. And it wasn't easy, you know, but I got through it.
Yeah. You mentioned that deal with Warner. So am I right in thinking, Machine Shop Recordings was that the first was that a subsidiary of Warner?
Of Warner, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, got you. Okay. And so that was Brad Delson and Mike Shinoda from Linkin Park's label. Mm-hmm. And is that what then led to you singing on the Fort Minor
On Fort Minor, yep.
Right. Yep. Where'd you go?
And at the time I was going by Holly Brooke.
Yes.
That's my real first and middle name. And yeah, I had my first song on the charts with Where'd You Go?
What did that feel like though? Did that feel like, this is happening?
It was great. I loved it, but I was not prepared. I wasn't ready for the success. I didn't know what to do with it.
Okay.
Yeah. I got kind of thrown in. It was like a whirlwind, you know, from being leaving high school, going to LA, dealing with the horrible manager situation, getting signed within a year and a half of being there, and then within like 2 years having a song on the charts. It was just like a really fast-paced thing for me, and I was a little girl from buttfuck Wisconsin.
Yeah. Like
the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And so I had no idea what I was getting myself into. And suddenly I was on tour and like on these big stages, and I was uncomfortable. I'd never been on stages that big before, and I didn't know how to act. I didn't know how to move. Like it was just a lot. And then also, what do you do when you have a song on the radio? Do you follow it up with another single? Like I didn't know the strategy and all of that, you know?
Yeah.
It was a lot for, like, I think I was 19 by the time that song happened.
Yeah, that's a huge learning curve. I mean, you mentioned earlier some of the things you learned with your mum as far back as then, but were you able to take lessons out of that experience with Fort Minor? That
100%.
What sort of things did you learn that helped you with your next steps, do you think?
You know, I mean, I think I'm always learning, and that was just another layer of the snowball of, like, knowledge that I've been putting together for my entire life. And during that time, I feel like one thing I learned was what to do when you have a song that's doing well. How to like maximize it, because it's here today and then it's gone tomorrow. That moment. And if you didn't take advantage of that moment, people forget about you. And so learning how to, you know, follow up a single properly and stuff like that. I'm still learning how to do that, but that was like the first time I experienced the big boy game of music. It wasn't, you know, touring with my mom in elementary schools anymore.
Yeah. Could you enjoy it at all? Were there any moments where you could step back and go, wow, this is good?
Yeah, I did. I did enjoy it for a while. And then I, you know, like I mentioned earlier, at a certain point, things kind of fell apart for me. And I parted ways with the label, and simultaneously my manager parted ways with me. And then soon after, my lawyer was like, well, I'm not making any money off you now, so.
Tough lessons.
You know? And then I went broke, and I had, that was another thing was money, having a record advance. I took most of my advance and paid back the producers that had helped me get my deal. But then I was left with literally no money.
Right.
Which probably wasn't the smartest decision, but I was like, I got to take care of the people that helped me get here, you know?
Sure.
But then I was broke, so it made it really tough.
And is that what then, I guess, made you decide that you're done with LA? Was it at that point you've got no money? It started there. Okay.
It started there. I went and got a couple jobs. They didn't go so well. I started playing keyboard and singing backup for Duncan Sheik.
Yeah.
On tour. Did that for a year or so, or maybe 2, which was nice because at least I was doing music instead of, you know, sitting at a desk somewhere.
Sure.
But eventually, I remember I wrote in a journal while I was on tour with him. I wrote like some dreams. I just was writing about how I loved my experience with him and singing backgrounds and playing keyboards and being on tour, but I wasn't meant to be a backup artist.
Right.
I want to be the artist. I want to be in the spotlight.
Yeah.
Not in the shadows.
Yeah.
You know? And I started getting a little antsy, but I wrote all of it down in my notebook. And it's so funny, too, because I was on tour for so long with him that I'm a nature lover. I love nature so much. But we were just touring cities, and I was missing nature so much. Mm-hmm. And I wrote down, I just want to live in a cabin in the woods and have a studio. And it was like 2 years or a year something later when I was like, fuck it, I'm just going to do it.
Yeah.
And I left LA and I moved to a cabin in the woods. But I manifested it. I wrote it down in my journal, and then it happened.
And you're only 23 at this point, if I'm right in thinking.
Yeah, I was, yeah.
Which is young for you to be thinking, I guess for you to be feeling like you've been churned around and spat back out at 23. Was there part of you going, what's next? Or did you think, well, it's still going to be music. I just need to step back for a bit and figure out the next step?
I don't think I ever really gave up on music itself, but I gave up on LA for a while and like the whole industry. I knew I had to figure it out with music. I was lost. And that's why I had written in my journal, I just want to go to the cabin in the woods with my studio. And I wanted to figure out who I wanted to be as an artist and what I wanted to do with my career. Because I was lost. I didn't know. I was listening to everybody's opinions around me saying, you should do this, you should do that.
How long did it take before you got some clarity and you started to figure out this is the artist I want to be?
When I was in the woods, so this was 2008, I think, or 2009. I think it was actually 2009. I was there for about 4 months, and that was a long time to be living by myself in the middle of nowhere.
Is it literally the woods? Like literally you're in a cabin in the woods?
So it was like a 1-bedroom, like a fire lookout. So it was a circle.
Okay.
That was like, I don't know if it was a real fire lookout converted with a bed in it or something, but it almost was like a yurt, but with wood on the walls instead of canvas. It was like a real structure.
Yeah.
And the bathroom was outside. It had a toilet, but it was a different building. And it was like my mom's friend had this property and this little cabin on it. And I basically traded work for my rent. So I would work at her little art gallery in town in exchange for staying at this cabin. But it was definitely off the beaten path. To get Wi-Fi, I had to go a half hour into town.
Wow.
And to get to the cabin, it was actually in the woods, but on a sand dune. Because in Oregon, there's a lot of sand dunes. So it was all these trees, but the ground was sand. Okay. And so you couldn't drive up to it because it was on top of a hill. So it was like a 1/4 mile probably hike up to the cabin, which doesn't sound like a lot. But in the middle of the night, if I came home from somewhere and had to park my car at the bottom and walk up in mountain lion territory by myself, with a flashlight. And it was terrifying. And for the first 2 weeks, it was really terrifying. Yeah. After 2 weeks, I really settled into it. And I felt kind of in tune with the nature around me. Okay. But at first, I felt like a total alien there.
Right. And you've got all these, you probably got all these horror movies going through your head.
Totally. Your senses get so heightened when you're living in nature like that, though. Yeah. Like, you're so aware. You become so aware of every noise, everything.
Mm. And did that flow into your songwriting then?
I don't know. I don't really know.
But it just gave you peace.
Yeah. I mean, it was just, honestly, freaking myself out like that, walking through the woods at night alone, overcoming that and not being so afraid after 2 weeks, I was like, oh, I'm stronger than I thought I was.
Right. Okay.
It was kind of this reassuring thing for me to go through because it made me realize it's not so bad. And anything I think is hard or scary in life, maybe it's not as bad as it looks from the outside if you just give it a shot. Okay.
Yeah.
And so I started learning my, my limits. Mm-hmm. I pushed myself. I scared myself. I did things that were maybe not the smartest idea, but wandering around the woods in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
In mountain lion territory, for real. But getting through it, I came out of that whole experience with so much confidence.
Okay.
Where I went into it thinking like I suck, the industry doesn't want me, I failed, and I came out of that feeling like I can do anything.
Yeah.
I can literally do anything I set my mind to.
And you did. I mean,
I did. And then it led to writing Love the Way You Lie. And I was like, that's proof.
And that's an incredible turnaround. So if I understand correctly, you were still in touch with your publisher at this time, and your publisher connected you with Alex da Kid. Is that right?
Yeah. So I actually hadn't talked to my publisher in years.
Okay.
But I still had a publishing deal. So I was like, well, they better pick up the phone. And she did. And she's great. And she was like, hey, girl, it's been way too long. Come to New York, sit in my office. Let's brainstorm what to do with you. And so I did. And we talked about, what my goals were, what I wanted to do. At the time, my vision was to write and sing on hip hop songs. I wanted to write rap hooks and sing them. And she was like, well, we just signed this new producer. I think you should meet him. And so I went back to the cabin, and she hooked us up on email, and he sent me some beats, and Love the Way You Lie was one of them. I took that beat and I wrote the hook, recorded it, sent it back. It was like a 15-minute turnaround like that, and sent it back. And a month later, it was the #1 song.
Recorded by Eminem, with obviously Rihanna doing, I guess, your hook, your vocal hook.
Yeah. I was a little upset about that because I love Rihanna, don't get me wrong, and it was a huge experience for me. But I wanted to sing it.
Right.
I never envisioned myself writing songs for other artists. It was not part of the plan.
But then that's exactly what happened for a little while after that, isn't it? You get, what is it? I Need a Doctor with Dre featuring Eminem, and Coming Home with Diddy and Dirty Money, and Clarity by Zed, which was just huge hits. You've said several times that you wanted to be the artist, not necessarily the songwriter. Were you conflicted then? Because this is obviously great success on the one hand.
Yeah, I mean, on one hand, I had so much, and I still do. I'm so grateful for these huge opportunities coming from where I did, with feeling like such a failure. My first round in the game, I was like, I'm making money now in this music business for the first time ever, like real money, not just like an advance that I have to try to make back, but I'm actually making money. So that was exciting. And I got Grammy nominations. And so it was amazing. But at a certain point, probably within the last few years, it really hit me that, writing songs for other people was never my goal. And there's still this like missing part of my soul. Like I feel like I haven't fulfilled my visions and my dreams yet, because I focused so much on writing songs for other people for so long because it was successful that I neglected really putting as much energy into my own art. And so within the past couple of years, I've turned down a lot of sessions, songwriting sessions that were for other people, because I'm just like, it's not about the money anymore. It's about my heart, and I'm not fulfilled by writing songs for other people anymore.
Right.
My bank account might get fulfilled, but
Sure.
that only does so much for me emotionally. I want to make the art that I want to make and see it, from start to finish.
Absolutely.
Sometimes I hand these songs to people, and I'm not going to name any names, but I'm like, I could have sang that way better. You mentioned, just being honest.
Absolutely. You mentioned earlier that when you had that hit with Fort Minor, and it was such a whirlwind, did that prepare you for when Love the Way You Lie then became a big hit? And again, you go very quickly from being broke in a cabin in Oregon to having the #1 song in the world. Were you a little bit better prepared to deal with that this time around?
Yeah, I was. And I think exactly like I learned the first time around with the Fort Minor song what not to do. And so I, after Love the Way You Lie came out, and even though I didn't sing it, I was like, I'm going to blow this up. I'm going to let the world know I fucking wrote that song.
Yeah.
So I hired a publicist, and I treated it completely differently.
Yeah.
I was like, I need to, while this song is on the charts and huge, I need to let the world know that I did this. Because if I don't let the world know, then nobody's going to care. Like a few years down the road when the song's not, popping anymore.
Sure.
I learned that the hard way.
Yeah.
The first time,
And you mentioned earlier that when you did the Fort Minor song and when you did your music on Warner, you were Hollybrook. But then after, I'm not sure when exactly you changed your name to, or you started performing under Skylar Grey.
Yeah.
But go on. Sorry, what were you going to say?
No, I was going to say I changed my name to Skylar Grey because I knew I knew how this industry worked a little bit at this point because I'd been through it once. And I was afraid that by coming back into the game as the same person I was before, people would write me off as somebody who's already tried and failed and not be as excited about discovering this new artist. So I changed my name to Skylar Grey, and I never, for a while, I didn't show my face. I was like, really shadowed in the pictures that I put up online. And people were like, who is Skylar Grey? And like created this whole buzz and this stir. And I remember getting a couple calls, like right on Christmas from some record companies that were wanting to sign me. And they had no idea what I looked like or who I was, but they wanted to sign me, so crazy. But then, just as I predicted, it started coming out that I was actually Holly Brooke. Like, people figured it out.
Okay.
And I remember, I don't know who it was, somebody from a label. I overheard a phone call, and they said, oh, it's just Holly Brooke.
Ouch.
Yeah. And I was like, that's exactly why I changed my name. Because I didn't want the industry to write it off as like, oh, it's just Holly Brooke. Like, let's get excited about this new artist, But, it worked out because I held it together with the mystery for long enough that I got enough attention and buzz off of it that I ended up getting signed to Interscope, and it was great. I mean, but also I will say, though, it wasn't the only reason I changed my name. I also changed my name because I just felt like I was on a completely new journey, and I wanted to rebrand my rebirth, know?
Right. Okay. I think I saw a comment from Billie Eilish where she was talking about how much she loved a couple of the songs that you released. I think when you signed to Interscope and you released, what was it, Don't Look Down and Natural Causes. And Billie has said that when she was 10, the song Final Warning and Wear Me Out, all she wanted was to have written songs like that. What does that mean to you when you read that from someone who's obviously younger than you, but who is, you've played a part in influencing who they've become. What does that mean to you?
I mean, it means so much to me. Like, because I know that feeling. I know the feeling of being the younger artist who's looking up to somebody. And to know that she feels that way about me, like I did with Fiona Apple or something, it's just so, I don't even know how to describe the feeling. That's a very fulfilling feeling.
Yeah. When you think about Natural Causes, so that came out in 2016. So 6 years later, here is your follow-up album, self-titled. What do you think this record is that the music you released with Interscope wasn't?
I loved working with Interscope, and we still have a great relationship. We had a very amicable parting of ways. I think we were on different pages creatively, and it is what it is, So the music I made when I was signed to Interscope, I think there was some of it was that we were reaching for something that didn't feel fully authentic to me because I had come out of these hip hop collaborations and stuff. It felt like we needed to keep it hip hop leaning a little bit with like the production and stuff. But it's not the world I came from. I mentioned the people that I looked up to, Fiona Apple, Imogen Heap. There's no hip hop in there, And so I think with this album, there are actually some like kind of throwback hip hop breakbeats on there, but that's kind of like more authentic to me than some of the other bigger, louder beats that were on some of my other albums.
Right.
So I think with this album, I mean, obviously, too, the fact that I produced it compared to the other ones where I maybe lent a production hand to them, but I definitely didn't produce them.
Yeah.
There's just more of me in this.
Yeah.
It's more authentic, real, down to earth, like raw as fuck.
Just a couple of things before we finish up, Skylar. In terms of songwriting in general, we've spoken a couple of times about various lessons you've learned over the years. What have you learned about songwriting? Do you think you've unlocked the secret to a good song, that thing that is so hard to find?
Sam, that's a hard question. I mean, I'm a believer that, there's so many different niches of music and styles and genres and songwriting styles, that can please different audiences. So I don't necessarily believe there's like one formula or a certain way to write a song that is better than another. It's art. It should be looked at as like, okay, so-and-so might like it and the other person maybe not. And that's great. Like, it's to each their own. So, yeah, I feel weird about judging music in general. I think it's like, other than for your own personal opinion.
Sure.
So for me, I feel like I've unlocked the code for what works for me and what I like.
Okay.
But I can't say that it's unlocking the key to the universe for songwriting for everybody.
Sure.
Of
course.
It's like I have a method and a flow that I really like, and a sound and a structure and whatever, but that's just me.
Yeah. There is a darkness to your songwriting. Is that something that you've always been drawn to with songwriting?
Yeah, I've always, not just songwriting, but as a listener. Like I don't ever remember listening to, obviously, if I was like out on the lawn with my friends and we were making up dances, we would listen to the Spice Girls and Backstreet Boys. But other than that, if I was putting a CD on in my bedroom, it was always something dark or sad, somber, slow, melancholy, vibey. And so it was interesting to look back at that and realize, and back at my career and the music I put out, and be like, why did I do this? I didn't even listen to music like this. Like certain songs that I put out, I'm like, why am I putting out music that I wouldn't even buy? I wouldn't listen to just because it sounds like a hit, or it, sounds like it's going to be successful, or it's checking some box for some radio promo person. Like, why am I doing that? And so with this album, I wanted to make sure I wasn't doing any of that. There's no chasing of radio. I'm not trying to please the masses. I'm literally just making this album for me and my fans, my diehards, and anybody who, likes melancholy, sad music.
Nice.
That's my niche.
Skylar, just before we finish up, Jaxsta is all about giving credit where credit is due. Are there people that you would give credit to for helping you get where you are today?
Oh my God. Yes. So many. I think a huge thank you has to go out to Marshall Mathers, because, not only Love the Way You Lie, but everything he's included me on since then. I think I've done almost like 15 songs, worked on 15 songs with him at this point in my career. So super grateful for that. And he's taken me on tour multiple times around the world. I really owe a lot to him. Yeah. And, there's been different people along the way. Starting out with my mom, obviously. We talked about that. And then all the different producers and songwriters who believed in me and supported me and helped me, put packages together, getting signed. And then Alex the Kid, the many collaborations we did together that turned out to be huge successes, and him believing in me. And then recently, I give most credit to my fiance, because he has been with me through all the shit that I went through the past 5-6 years with this case. He's stood by my side. He's given me confidence. He's also a musician, singer-songwriter. When we first met, it was just a hobby for him. And I started including him on songwriting sessions and things because we lived together, and he came up with a lot of really good ideas that were very, I don't know what the word is, just very raw. Like, he wasn't coming from any place of the industry, didn't teach him how to do anything. So it was very, what's the word?
Authentic, or?
Just fresh.
Okay.
Like fresh ideas that, when you're trained by the music industry and songwriting sessions and stuff, we tend to get ourselves into these circles of writing all the same kind of shit all the time. And so he would come at me with these really fresh ideas. I'm like, that's so not something that somebody would bring to me in an LA session, and I love it.
Right.
You know? So I started including him on a lot of sessions, and then, and something that he did along the way, and I always felt so stupid because he'd be like, hey, because we'd be in the studio working on something, and he'd be like, can you put some 808s on that? Can you throw a beat on that? And I was like, no, I don't know how to do that. I know how to record vocals and piano and strings. And so when he started like asking me to do beats on stuff, I was like, I got to figure this out.
Right.
So I don't want to look stupid to my fiance. I can't make beats. So without even trying, he pushed me to learn how to produce.
Okay.
Over the past 5 years, because I just wanted to impress him and like, you know, show off my skills. And so I got way better at production because of him. And so that's why I was able to, you know, make this album now that I produced fully myself because of that.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's great. Skylar, look, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you having a chat with me. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Good times.
And that's it for another episode of Humans of Music. A big thanks to Skylar for her time, and thank you for listening. Just a reminder that Skylar's new self-titled album is out now. If you have any feedback on the show or suggestions on who you'd like me to interview, or even if you just want to say hello, please drop me a line at humansofmusic@jaxsta.com. That's humansofmusic, one word, at Jaxsta, JAXSTA.com. This episode was mixed by Lachlan Mitchell from Parliament Studios in Annandale, and the incidental music and theme song were written and performed by Sam Lockwood. Please remember to subscribe to the Humans of Music podcast so you never miss an episode, or even better, share it amongst your friends and rate and review it. And remember, next time you need to know who wrote a song, who produced a song, who engineered it, who played on it, who sang on it, who did anything on it, head to jaxsta.com for all your official music credit information. Until the next episode of Humans of Music, I'm Rod Yates. Thanks for listening.